Hey, what's up guys? This is Austin with your Week 3 Fantasy Preview. Let's start off by taking a look at some trades you might be able to make. So good news for you guys who have to play EU picks this week, maybe in a deeper league. Both Splice and Fnatic will be playing 2 matches this weekend. Splice will take on Unicorns of Love, who does look pretty good right now, and Origin. Splice players are owned by less than 50% of fantasy LCS players, so guys like Senkux and Kobe can really buff your roster heading into this weekend. Fnatic will take on Misfits and Roccat. With Fnatic, I would look at Reckless as a nice flex option if you're in a 4 to 6 man league. If you're in an 8 man league, and let's say you didn't have the best draft, or your starting AD doesn't have the most desirable matchups this weekend, you could even look at Reckless to start in that AD spot. Top laners have been a little iffy this split. A lot of underwhelming players. So to have a veteran like Soaz, who's going to be playing 2 matches this week, and who's probably owned by a very small portion of the community, is a nice luxury to have. As for other Fnatic players, Caps is a good player in the mid lane. He does make a lot of explosive plays, fun to watch, but he is relatively new. We have not seen a lot out of him on stage, so that addition would come with some hesitation. Jez is in the support role. Jez is not new to the LCS, of course, playing in both EU and NA in the past, but he is new to that role, and we haven't seen a ton of Fnatic, so those 2 guys do come with hesitation. Froggen is the leading scorer in the best game format, and he's only owned by 67% of fantasy LCS players. Echo Fox is coming off a 2-0 week. They do have a slightly more difficult schedule heading into this weekend, which I will cover later in the episode. But Froggen is a player that, if he's available in your league, he presents himself to be a nice mid or flex option heading into the next couple weeks. And finally, there's Altec. Altec will face Dignitas and Immortals, who have notoriously given up quite a few fantasy points this split. Immortals, of course, had week 2 they'd like to forget, and Dignitas has been competitive, but they also play in a lot of games where the kill count is pretty high, and so their fantasy opponents can put up some real numbers. Altec and a lot of FlyQuest have really outperformed, I think, our expectations to start the split, so he is a nice addition to anyone's roster, I think, right now. Moving on to a new segment called Hot or Not. I think you guys can pretty much guess the rules of this one based off the title. First up, we have CLG. CLG went 0-2 last week, and they have to face TSM and Dignitas this week. So we're going to go ahead and deem them as not. There's just not a lot of confidence surrounding that roster right now, I don't think, which is surprising because they have stuck together for, I believe, 3 splits in a row now, 3 or 4. So they should be better, maybe with time. Tough start to the split, but right now they are not. Immortals, pretty underwhelming for most of last week. In a best game format, I know Dardoch and company put up a roughly 5 points in their first match, which is pretty bad. Pobelter claims to have fixed his mouse issue. I guess he was playing with a different mouse setting in solo queue versus on stage, and he claims he felt a lot more confident in that last series against Envy. That could just be because they were playing against Envy. So we'll have to see how that works out. But they do face P1 and FlyQuest this week, who both look a little bit stronger than Immortals to start the split. So for that reason, I'm deeming them not. But finally in this segment, we have Moon. Moon, believe it or not, is the highest scoring jungler in the best game format. He has 60 kills. That is 7 more than the next closest jungler. I don't think anyone thought that Moon would be leading the the field of junglers and kills to start the split. I think we all probably thought it would be someone like Dardoch, who plays really aggressive. But no, it's Moon. And FlyQuest is looking good. We'll see if they can keep that up, but we're going to deem Moon hot. Now let's take a look at this week's sleeper picks. So first up we have Team Liquid. They will face Envy and Echo Fox this week. They were a little underwhelming last week, but because of their schedule this week, they are a very good sleeper option. They should definitely put up points against Envy with players like Piglet, Rainover. It would be really hard not to, I think. And Echo Fox, they do have mojo. Did go 2-0 last week, but it is a team that you can score fantasy points against, and especially when you get to play them more than once, you do have a really good shot at doing that. So I look for Team Liquid players to be good sleeper options this week. Joining them is Keith. Keith put up 63 points in the best game format last week. He does have slightly tougher matchups this week against Liquid and then Cloud9. Now, they do, that being Echo Fox, have a lot of mojo, I think, after that 2-0 week. They started the split really down. In a lot of matches they should have won. I think they got a lot of validation last week in themselves, a lot of confidence built. So against Cloud9, I wouldn't expect too much, but that's what a sleeper pick is for. It's that potential, that hope that they might go off, and realistically, he does have a good chance. Echo Fox as a whole does have a pretty good chance, but we're going to go with Keith as our second sleeper. And now it's time to hold myself accountable for last week's advice and another new segment called Report Card. So let's start off by taking a look at the good suggestions from last week. We had Jensen Contracts, of course, had very good weeks. FlyQuest as a whole had a good week, although they did lose on day 2. They still had a very good day 1, and overall put up a respectable amount of points. Acadian and Echo Fox did very well, that 2-0 week, of course. And Impact, if you remember last week, in last week's mailbox section, when determining whether you should start Ray or Impact, I did think Impact was going to start both games. I thought they were pretty important games for Cloud9 on paper against two competitive teams, and I think that's good news if you're an Impact owner, because you do now have that sense of validation that when C9 plays important games, Impact should be in there. So that's good news for you. The bad, I did recommend Stixay. Stixay did not do terrible, to be clear. He did put up a good amount of points, although I did think he would put up a lot more. I definitely didn't think CLG would be off to such a slow start, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better this week. Both my sleeper picks last week, Apollo and Keen, were a little bit down. Not terrible, but not great. But again, sleeper picks. And finally, one of the EU teams I recommended was Vitality, because they played 2 matchups last week. They did pretty poorly. Misfits and UOL performed well, though. But Vitality really did not live up to expectations. They had, I believe the first match was probably similar to what Immortals put up in their first match. Single-digit scores almost. Maybe someone broke double digits, 10, 11 points, but it was pretty bad. So for those picks, I apologize. Finally, we have our mailbox questions for week 3. So the first question I found on the Fantasy LCS subreddit. I did both of these actually, by the way. Altec or Wild Turtle? I'm going to go with Wild Turtle. I'm hesitant right now not to start TSM players because they are top 2 in the league. Altec has been good. If you can fit them in a flex spot, sure. As for starting ADs go, I would opt for Wild Turtle just because the successful environment that he is in. The second question, Zig or Lorlo? I mentioned earlier top laners have been a little underwhelming this split. Flame is someone who I think we expected to get off to a little bit better start. Someday had a good week 1 last week. Not great. Not terrible, but not great. Looper, a world champion. I mean, Echo Fox, the expectations were a little bit lower, but I think maybe we thought Looper would be doing a little better. Darshan, a product of CLG. So top laners are a little bit difficult right now. But for this question, I would go with Lorlo. Lorlo has a much easier schedule this week. I mentioned the Team Liquid schedule earlier. It just seems like he has a better chance to put up points than Zig. Although P1 does look competitive, but they will have to face TSM this week, which is always difficult to face a top 2 team in the table. Remember guys, you can always send more questions to be answered in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe for more fantasy LCS content. Thank you for listening and good luck in week 3.